I hope you're ready for some illogic. Last time we went over our semifinals match against Joe 8 and his Akron Agrons. Please go check that video out first if you have not done so already, as we went over the Teambuilder and battle, in which, spoiler alert, the Buffalo Bouffalant tacked on yet another win in a 5-0 victory off the back of a stupid good Rotom-Heat set that walled the Togekiss and Dugtrio, among other things, all day long. That means that this time we've got our finals match. Our opponent is MrQuality, Matt and his Cincinnati Incineroar, led by the ferocious fire types of the sun, including GMax Charizard, as well as other scary threats like Dragapult that complement them. I'd mentioned in our Week 6 battle how good I thought his team was overall and how difficult it was to prep for, especially that Charizard, so it's zero surprise to see to me that he bested the Cleveland Castforms in the quarterfinals, followed by the Waterdeep Wobbuffets in the semifinals. Before we get into everything in depth, the timestamps for the team builder and the battle will be down in the description, as will a link to the Wooper Club League page. We've been doing commentary for all the playoff matches, so you can get even another great chance to hear my sweet dulcet tones over on that channel too. So, Matt has got, once again, a Dragapult, Cinderace, Cobalion, Ninetales, Gigantamax Charizard, that is tied for the kill leader in the league, Rotom-Mow, Slurpuff, Gigantamax Lapras, Golurk, and a Bronzong. Similarly to last time, I think Kill Leader GMax Charizard and Ninetales are the most outrageous to deal with, followed closely by the Dragapult. Cinderace is a huge issue too, even without Libero, which brings up the main issue being how fast these threats are, with all the aforementioned mons being at least base 100 speed. Cobalion, also above that threshold, is a pretty big threat as well, as is Rotom-Mow, which is a somewhat common Scarfer. Those six are probably the most likely to come as well, although Bronzong is a decent check to some of my team members, and Lapras is a very tanky boy that also showed up in the Week 6 match. As for me, Dugtrio and Celebi have no place in this matchup, losing horribly to all the top threats and getting outsped frequently by them, despite their good speed stats as well. Speaking of speed, I really wanted to bring Excelgor for maybe another cheeky final Gambit surprise, but I couldn't end up justifying it over any other team members, especially when there's a Dragapult immune to the fighting move, and I didn't wish to give him any time to set up, or maybe get the fast U-turn into something that couldn't take a hit. Finally, Weezing is unfortunately sitting the bench here too, as it just doesn't do anything actively enough, despite being one of the only mons on my team that can take a GMax Wildfire from Blast Burn in the sun. So, yes, it's going to be the same 6 Pokemon as the first time we faced off in Week 6, but only one of them remains unchanged, and that will be Rotom, the Charizard check. We do survive GMax Wildfire with relative ease, and Thunder Wave seems like a very cool answer to it. If he has saved something else in the back, like one of the other speedy mons, Dragapult, Cinderace, or whatever, Thunder Wave slowing them down allows other members of the team to shine. Otherwise, Volt Switch is great momentum and damage, Overheat should get powered up by the inevitable sun being brought, and Defog is an emergency button if sticky webs or rocks absolutely need to go. So let's go over to the other mons that didn't change much, such as our Scrafty, who only got an ability change this time over to Intimidate. Looking back through Matt's matches, I noticed they only ever brought physical Dragapult, and the one time his stats had a chance to drop, they did. Knowing that, I run sub quite often, and I am in fact bringing it again here on another mon. Intimidate seemed like a decent read in anticipation of Dragapult running Infiltrator rather than Clear Body. This is still the primary Dragapult check, and similarly to Rotom, I can't really imagine bringing it in until that specific threat is out or dealt with. I suppose I could have brought Galarian Weezing here as a possibility, but I like the stab knockoff spam potential as well as the ability to deal with things like Cobalion with Drain Punch. Still having Rest on here without the Shed Skin ability does seem a little bit odd, but I'm pretty confident that I should be able to switch in and out and do what I need to do, and Rest is more of an emergency button this time than before. Next up is going to be our Kingler, who is now holding a Life Orb over the Focus Sash, and has a slightly different EV spread as well. We've got enough speed for Dragapult, as well as a +1 Charizard or Ninetales, and with the Life Orb boost, we don't even need to Dynamax all the time to get KOs. For example, Dragapult is KO'd by knockoff regardless, and a little chip damage allows Liquidation to OHKO all of the fire types, even in the sun. Life Orb helps a ton with that for sure. Even Rotom-Mow gets OHKO'd by Max Flutterby, which at least lowers Lapras' special attack in a pinch as well. It's a pretty cool sweeper idea. It could probably set up on something like maybe Cobalion or Cinderace, or even Rotom if it's at -2 from a Leaf Storm. Get the choice to go Life Orb not only helps the damage, but Focus Sash I felt wasn't really the best option, considering the possibility of Rocks, which I know he wished he had again last time, and as well as GMax Wildfire, which is just going to do continuous damage. So once again, the Life Orb, the damage from that seemed much more valuable to me than trying to get a Focus Sash to help set up that agility. So next up, Aegislash was the Scarfer of choice last time, but here it's got a Choice Band, allowing it to OHKO and 2-hit KO more threats. Aegislash forces him out very often, and Shadow Claw has 0 resists on his team, with no normal types or dark types to speak of. This set can take advantage of coming in on something like Lapras or Cobalion to start swinging with banded Shadow Claws, something nothing can afford to switch into. The other moves are great coverage, with Close Combat OHKOing some Lapras and doing decently good damage all around, and Shadow Sneak doing absurd amounts of priority damage. Of course, helping with breaking through the opponent's annoyances are the 2 strange sets I've got prepared for the finals, which includes a stalling Kyurem-Black. This may look similar to the Aegislash set I've had success on with this season, and that's because it's got Leftover, Substitute, and Toxic on it, along with a single special attack, this time Earth Power, and we've also got Roost instead of the King's Shield. Earth Power is the move to hit everything but Charizard at least neutrally, thanks to Terravolt, which means it can hit the Bronzong as well as the Rotom. Otherwise, I was very impressed with the tankiness this thing displayed, taking less than 50% from any of Ninetales' moves even in the sun, and potentially keeping its substitute up outside of the sun. That's really the main goal, honestly, along with having a reliable switch in to any Rotom without Trick. I'm really looking forward to showcasing how annoying this Kyurem set can be, as I don't think I've had the opportunity to use Roost yet this season. It's a pretty creative way to use this. Speaking of creative ways to use Pokemon, I don't think you're ready for this one. Our last Pokemon is going to be a Choice Scarf Seismitoad to round things out. That's right, Scarf Seismitoad can outspeed Cinderace and slower, while OHKOing said Cinderace or Ninetales with Earthquake. That's literally the entire premise of the set, right there. Of course, getting up rocks would be nice, though I think there's a better chance I see Boots on more targets this time. And of course, we've got a fast knockoff to spam to hit things like Dragapult or Bronzong, though Cobalion switching in is a little bit of a risk for that. Rock Tomb, of course, is the final neutral play, hitting Charizard very hard and potentially stopping it from boosting speed at all, while still hitting Ninetales and Cinderace very hard. Cool set, definitely have high expectations for it, so let's see what we can make happen in the championship match. At Team Preview, I see no Steel types, with Cinderace coming over Cobalion compared to last time. This is, frankly, pretty relieving, as I see no Hazard set up on his team at all now, as well as no Cobalion to run all over my Kyurem. I know rocks are good to get up early, even if boots are going to be more prevalent, so I think I'm just going to lead off with Toad, hoping he doesn't start off with the Rotom, as he leads off with the strong Cinderace start. To be honest, I was freaking out a little bit here, but I had to do so silently as we were on call as per usual, but I got so super excited as soon as I clicked the button, because the weird set paid off immediately. Scarf Toad caught everybody by surprise. And going up 6-5 on turn 1 is incredibly satisfying. It worked. I'm not getting rocks up early, but I don't even need to get them up for the Cinderace or anything else, because his Court Changer is gone as well. That's a pretty nice win. Taking Sun Boosted Pyro Balls was not going to be any fun at all, so this was incredibly huge. Rotom makes for a pretty easy switch in here, and of course my easy switch into that is going to be the Kyurem, as it is very unlikely he'll try to trick my Toad, who is now known to be Scarfed. He Volt switches, good play. It's impossible for me to stay in with my immunity Toad, and I take only 8% from that. The power of a full special defense Kyurem is pretty nice. His switch is Ninetales, but you should immediately notice something is very wrong. This Ninetales doesn't have Drought. Oh, I know how much things like Ninetales and Charizard rely on that sun. I don't know how many of these things have Solar Beam or how much the damage calcs are based on sun. Having it missing is absolutely devastating. And looking back, I do wonder if maybe I should have just allowed him to restart the match 5v6 and given him a shot with the proper ability. This is kind of a gray area for me, to be honest, though it definitely would have made for a better, maybe more fair match. Not that it's a bad match, or that Matt has no chance to turn it around, but yeah, I feel really bad about this. It's super, seriously big deal for sure. No two ways about it. It could have very easily impacted the game overall, and we can kind of go over that as the game progresses. As it is, though, we play on. So, Flamethrower in the sun only does about 36 to 39%, so outside of the sun, it only does that 23%. So, even without the sun, I do know that Ninetales does have a very good special defense stat, so we'll just go for the Toxic, put Ninetales on a timer, and seeing that very small damage roll, I know Substitute becomes that much safer, because he's going to have a much tougher time breaking through it. This is proving to be pretty true here, as I just decide to sub up And yep, it's able to tank a flamethrower, and I could just roost off the damage. This is pretty obnoxious, especially knowing that I could just sub again this next turn as he destroys the first sub with another flamethrower. The poison damage is starting to really rack up, so he's going to swap out into the Rotom-Mow, who I know I can handle with ease. But for the second time this playoffs, my tier 1 behind a substitute is forced out with a red card, which is very interesting. I'm not really sure why red card has suddenly become such a popular option to deal with me. I don't know if I set up that much, but I guess the substitutes are pretty annoying here. However, I don't have to worry about something like Trick necessarily either, so I feel that Kyurem is a much better answer now. So with Aegislash being forced out, Rotom is still out of range of my Choice Banded Shadow Sneak, and I really don't want to get burnt just in case he's got that on him. So I just want to make the safe play back into Kyurem, who does not have a physical attack. And the worst that this burn is going to do here, which he does eat off the Will-O-Wisp, only serves to nullify my Leftovers recovery. So sub looks pretty free here, but I'm a little worried about the Infiltrator Dragapult, so I decide to just lay down a Toxic on whatever comes in. But I actually outspeed the Rotom, and I do miss, which is pretty unfortunate for sure. That Toxic line would have been pretty nice. Of course, having Drought on Ninetales would have been pretty nice, but otherwise, a Roost could have been pretty safe play there, I suppose, to keep healthy for later as well. As it is, Dragapult is in. It's possibly got a super effective move with either Dragon Darts or the Draco Meteor, so very obviously out to Scrafty we go, showing that it is indeed Infiltrator, not Clear Body. So Dragon Dance only ends up giving him +1 speed in the end, which really doesn't do anything. The Scarf Toad wasn't going to outspeed it anyways, so now the only thing it's really outspeeding is just Kingler after an Agility, which isn't really in play at all right now. So that's not bad. Definitely good to keep him low on stats. So now it's time to remove whatever he's holding. Dragon Dart's only doing it 19 per hit, not bad at all. No Life Orb. And unfortunately, it reveals itself to be a weakness policy. And at +2, I'm actually in KO range. After a quick calc, I don't think clicking Protect and getting another turn of Leftovers recovery is even going to help. I know he can't necessarily afford to Dragon Dance up again, but I need to be absolutely sure. So I just click Knock Off again here. He does pick up the KO on Scrafty with Dragon Darts, and Dragapult is suddenly a problem. Though, thankfully, it's down to only 30%, which is pretty nice. Aegislash absolutely needs to be the play here, though, because Priority Shadow Sneak is the only method I have of outspeeding this monster. I did briefly consider clicking Shadow Claw here. I thought that could have been kind of interesting, knowing that he would be expecting a Shadow Sneak, but I really need to get rid of this thing. I decided Banded Sneak was going to do a bunch of damage to anything regardless. I've made that kind of misplay in a previous match where I didn't really expect my Shadow Sneak to do as much as it would. I'm banded. Whatever it is, I'm going to do a ton. I can easily save the Aegislash for later if it does switch out, but instead he is, in fact, going to let the Dragapult go down to Shadow Sneak. Probably the right play for him, to be honest, unless he decides maybe to go for Lapras or something. So this does make an easy play into the Charizard for him. It's time for the big boy. Charizard is that much less threatening without the sun, so keep in mind that everything with the Charizard could have been very different if the sun was up. He may not have brought him in yet, may have tried to bring in the Ninetales first to just sack that. So just again, keep that in mind. And also, of course, the recoil damage from Solar Power could come into play for that too, but just keep all that in mind as we go on. Aegislash obviously does not want to stay in here. It's got plenty of use for later on. He's got a bulky Lapras in the back that may require that fighting coverage that only Aegislash provides. So I decided to make a middle ground play into Seismitoad because I'm expecting a fire move. Instead, he reveals the Ancient Power attack that he's used to try to hit the Rotom. And now I'm a little scared, but obviously less so if Sun isn't a factor. I do get to obviously click Rock Tomb now, but he makes a nice switch out into the Rotom, who takes minimum damage from it. Of course, that also means that Kyurem is my play once again, and he Volt switches out yet again. Good play. Right back into the Charizard. So I'm definitely confident in my special bulk against the thing, so I decide to stay in on his Gigantamax. And he gets a speed boost from Max Airstream. 33% from Max Airstream, which is absolutely insane. Special defense Rotom. Or not Rotom, full special defense Kyurem. I was expecting the Rotom to be the one to be taking these hits, but full special defense Kyurem, wow. So I have my plan to solve the Dynamax. I think this is going to work. He starts to show off the full gambit of moves now. Max Roxfall is going to help do a little bit more damage at the end due to the super effective hit, as well as tack on some residual damage. And because he can't set the sun, that's probably the best he can do. And it's going to follow up with a GMax Wildfire, of course, which will also do that residual damage. At the end of Charizard's Gigantamax, you see me taking we're just about 23% there from the residual damage from Burn, Sandstorm, and the Wildfire, which is kind of crazy. So I'm still standing about 76%, though I am being battered by just about everything. Again, this is probably a very different story if the sun were up and solar power active. Again, he'd be down to about 80% or so from the solar power recoil, and he'd be doing a lot more damage, such that I may not even be up right now if that were going on. Of course, the Sandstorm could have changed a lot of things if he wanted to use the Ancient Power. I know that was just there to hit the Rotom in the sun, but still. So he's going to click Ancient Power again, and I'm starting to get a bad feeling about what he's fishing for here, but I really need to get this Toxic off, and I do land it, thank goodness. So thankfully Charizard is put on a timer, and it's taking damage not only just from the Toxic, but also the Sandstorm. So we're starting to chip away at this thing just a little bit. Probably not the way you'd normally go after a Charizard, by chipping it down like this, but that's kind of what needs to happen there. The second Ancient Power, unfortunately, he does get the boost this time. And again, he is starting to get worn down a little bit. My Roost isn't necessarily helping enough. I suppose it was about time he got a secondary effect, though. After a couple Flamethrowers earlier, 3 Ancient Powers, it's still poorly timed. And with that boost, Charizard powers through even my max special defense Kyurem with the Flamethrower, and my beast has fallen. Charizard is down to 46% though, so Seismitoad is my switch in, because it takes less from the fire and the rock coverage, and Solar Beam is absolutely impossible to use in one turn. So at +1 speed, he just air slashes to do more than half, and I flinch. Uh-oh, there goes my Revenge Killer this turn. He was supposed to use Rock Tomb, of course, and if he somehow survived anything, I'd outspeed it, because I meant to outspeed +1 Charizard, but, oh boy. I considered saving the Toad here, but I figured Lapras eats up all of his hits, whereas Rotom isn't hit all that hard either. Ninetales is already on a timer. Toad is honestly pretty expendable here, so he's just going to eat up the Flamethrower that could have destroyed most anything else that was coming in here. This was a good play. And Charizard was dying to Toxic that turn anyway, so now we've got a 3 versus 3 with the Double Blind switch, but all of my Pokemon are at full health. And consider that his Ninetales is at 40% without Drought. Rotom-Mow is itemless and down to 60%, and I still have even a potential Dynamax with Kingler, so I still like my position overall. Considering Charizard is dead, Rotom-Heat seems the easy switch for me. That was the mon again that was supposed to be used for Charizard. It'll now come out here against his mostly useless Ninetales, which again makes a lot of sense. Flamethrower from him is going to do very pitiful damage that I just get to Volt Switch out into Kingler. I tried to scare him a little bit here. I wonder if maybe he had a coverage move for Kingler, something interesting, and I decided to swap back into Rotom to try to tank anything potentially coming in. Though, now that I think about it, his coverage move is probably Solar Beam, which wouldn't work without Drought, so maybe he could have just stayed in there with a Kingler, but of course he did have the Lapras in the back, which is now going to come in. I didn't want something so important like Kingler to be potentially statused or hit hard anyways, though, so... And Agility isn't a requirement anymore to set up anyways, with the only other fast mons being, Rotom now? That's it. So I don't even need Agility anymore, and its usefulness is starting to wane a little bit, so... Rotom eats the move. It only takes 23% from the Psyshock anyway, so it's not that bad. Down to almost half, Rotom is going to be able to paralyze this Lapras, which is about the only thing I can do to it status-wise, and Sparkling Aria actually does quite a bit of damage there. But that's not too big of an issue. Just going to fish First Mellow Magic as I Volt Switch out. And here I kind of have to decide between Aegislash, who has close combat, but could get statused, and I do decide to go out into it, knowing that probably Freeze Dry is going to come in as a pretty safe move against me. I assume he knew I was going to Volt Switch out, so that makes a lot of sense, that he would just go for Freeze Dry, assuming that I would go into Kingler, because otherwise Kingler eats up some moves, but I know what you're doing. I know that Freeze Dry was very threatening against this team, especially against the Seismitoad. I kind of use Seismitoad a little liberally for that purpose as well there, too. So, Aegislash did not get frozen, which is also very nice. Lapras reveals the leftovers as well, and is also going to reveal on the follow-up Protect there. Not that it's going to make too much of a difference, because Close Combat is about to murk something, which I'm very excited to see. I definitely outspeed the Lapras because of the Paralysis, and if the Rotom comes in, he's going to get bopped super hard. So this doesn't seem like too big of an issue. Aegislash doesn't really care about those few extra hit points in this thing. He's out for blood, and Lapras is going to go down. I don't want to risk anything at the end of the game here, so I get to go into Rotom-Heat, who takes a Volt Switch, and he, in fact, will get off the second Volt Switch as well, as I have 0 speed investment, and he's going to be able to KO me, netting him his 4th KO of the match, and actually, that's the most that anyone has gotten against me this season. With that said, however, I think it's only fitting that we try to give the final kill to the big boy himself. Kingler comes in, Dynamaxes, and is able to nail his Rotom with the Max Flutterby for the final kill of the season in the finals, netting us not just the 2-0 victory, but also the championship title for Season 4 of the Wooper Club League. GG to Matt, aka MrQuality, for a well-played finals match. Despite the drought mistake and a couple of small moments of potential hacks, it was still a great game. You played well. I definitely regret not having drought on there. Like that really sucks. I kind of wish we could have had a bit of a do-over to see what all could have happened there. Maybe you would have needed to use the Rotom a little bit. Maybe you would have caught me off guard with the Ancient Power. I'm not sure, but the bottom line is that your Buffalo Bouffalant are the Wooper Club League Season 4 champions. And that marks our 3rd consecutive title, with each season being more dominant than the last, culminating in a perfect 10-0 season here. What a blast it's been to play through the season, with all my friends too, each of which presented their own challenge and played excellently in their own rights. That being said, I'm also excited to announce that in the next Draft League, the Wooper Club hosts, if I'm invited to return, I will be drafting my all-time favorite Pokemon in Round 1. What might that mon be? Please continue following the channel to find that one out. We've been in talks about what the next couple seasons may hold, but for now, let's just recap this incredible season that we just concluded. So I wanted to try to round this video out by going over some of the stats that we had overall from this season. So just a quick look at the stats page on the Draft League website. Again, shout out to Automatic. Thank you so much for letting us use this site. It was very awesome to be able to utilize the website and its statistics and everything to compile everything with absolute ease. Let's kind of get into it. So first off there, Aegislash, of course, was the number 2 pick for me, and it finished with a 14-1 KD ratio in 9 games, which is honestly exceeded my expectations. This thing, I knew it was a super big threat. I also know that it's been kind of overlooked recently, at least in the OU meta, from things like Chansey even being a nice wall to it, to having a plethora of dark types that are starting to rule, and Aegislash just not really fitting in the meta anymore. But in addition to that 10-point drop in both the attack and special attack stats, or the defenses whenever it's in its other stance. But the typing is so good, the versatility is so good. This thing in Draft League is still an absolute champ, and I'm definitely going to consider using this in the future, as people are going to continue to underestimate it like this, for sure. Kyurem-Black was my number 1 pick. Finished once again, brought it 9 games, and it finished 9-2 in its KD. Definitely worthy of the number 1 spot with how many things it could do. It was so impressive. Different sets every week. It was definitely a possibility of bringing all special, all physical, mixed Dragon Dance setup, substitute toxic. Wow, what an absolute treat to be able to use this thing. And with the release of Scale Shot into its arsenal, it's definitely going to be banned in every Draft League from here on out. So definitely happy to take advantage of the opportunity that I had to use it. I don't anticipate that ever coming back. It was a blast for sure. Terravolt, very overlooked ability too. That was fun. 120 special text I'd overlooked. Very cool mon. I don't really know what else to say about it. Just look at the move pool for yourself. Next was Celebi. It was my last pick. Grass type, Psychic type. A couple of types of which I have a tough time drafting. I only brought it to half of the games, and I only finished with a KD of 2-2. I feel like I could have possibly gotten it to work a little bit better, but I did still appreciate the versatility it provided. I think a lot of it was victimized quite a bit by the draft selections that everyone else had done, and the prevalence of various coverage moves. I think there were just a lot of times where it just didn't fit what I was trying to do in a game. Definitely helped whenever it provided rocks, whenever it provided U-turn momentum. I love Future Sight as a move. At the very least, I definitely appreciated having a Psychic type with all those attributes. Ability to U-turn and Stealth Rock up as a Psychic type is very cool, very interesting. Its natural bulk was awesome. Recover, I wish I could have utilized that a little bit better, but obviously everything worked out in the end, I would say. Definitely the big surprise from Tier 2 was the Rotom-Heat. Wow. I brought it to all 10 games and only got 4 kills and died 3 times, but it was just a glue piece every single time. I really enjoyed being able to volt switch around, being able to build and mold it however I wanted to. At 252 HP each week really helped a lot because of that naturally low HP stat, but naturally high defenses. That was definitely a nice compliment to that. 86 speed, able to mold that however I wanted or needed it to. A reliable defogger for sure, especially with heavy duty boots. Boots really changed the face of this mon for sure. Very pleasant surprise with Rotom-Heat. Loved it for sure. Seismitoad, not the first time I've used this mon in Draft League, but it performed very well. I kind of expected it to bring it more often than I did, only 6 times in the 10 weeks, with a 7 and 3 KD. I ended up getting a bunch of those kills all at once too, especially in 1 or 2 matches. But again, very malleable mon. I really enjoyed it, using it. Water absorb, amazing ability. Would have been cool to try to use something like a Swift Swim set perhaps, but maybe even in the finals there, getting some ramp. Definitely considered it, but very safe mon. You know what it's going to do, but it's going to do its job very well. Loved having rocks, loved having knockoff. Very good mon. Definitely pleased with how it did. Wheezing Galar, wow. What about this? Is probably my biggest surprise from the draft. I was definitely hesitant in picking out this as my fairy type. I just thought it went really well with being a grounded poison whenever I needed it to be, and kind of overlooked how good neutralizing gas could be in a singles format. This thing outperformed all my expectations. Being able to bring things like Toxic Spikes, being able to bring things like Aromatherapy, just having strong coverage moves, Taunt, Clear Smog. Wow, being an answer to things neutralizing gas as well. Reliable Toxic or Will-O-Wisper. Outstanding. Wow. Very much, I thought maybe overperformed. But maybe that's just how it is. I've always kind of liked Weezing. I used Weezing in the previous draft to this, and maybe it's just kind of able to show its potential there by adding on the fairy typing and adding Strange Steam. Very cool mon. Sure, it died a bunch 5 times of the 8 times that I brought it, but it did its job every time. Definitely loved using Weezing. Outstanding tier 3. Excelgor, I only brought 2 times, and once it was just kind of used to set up some spikes. The other time it got a nice final Gambit kill. It could have been brought a little more, I think, but even just bringing it in the first week to show I could bring a mon with 145 base speed was pretty good. I think overall the bug typing of offense was not very good, especially in this league, and it didn't contribute all that much. I definitely see some issues with ghost types being very good right now and maybe becoming a necessity on a lot of teams, just because it just makes it very tough to use that final Gambit. Would have been cool perhaps to get spikes up more often, but I thought a lot of teams had very good and reliable hazard removal, and trying to sacrifice a team split for Excelgor when I would have really liked some of those other core members was a little bit rough for sure. But I know it made Excelgor work decently well, and just again having that threat of 145 speed was awesome. And if I get the chance to use it again, maybe I'll try to utilize that 100 special attack a little bit more. It's definitely an underrated point of it that I didn't utilize all that well. Scrafty, definitely enjoyed. Very for tier 4, I thought I got a lot of value out of it for sure. With nice defenses, again, every time I could, like the Rotom, I could bring just 252 HP and then mold it however I needed it to. Would have been cool to bring maybe more of a variety of sets. Maybe try a couple more times. Maybe Dragon Dance would have been pretty cool. I've always wanted to try an Amnesia set as well. Didn't really get the chance to do those, but perhaps if I get it again, I'll get the chance to do so. Shed Skin, amazing ability. Definitely overlooked that whenever I got it. Intimidate, was able to use that by the end. So, Scrafty, very cool, very solid pick. Definitely recommend it to others looking to try it out. The Dynamax Trio Alola really was just there to round out the speed tiers. The couple times I brought it, it was cool. I really wanted to use it in that battle against John, but I never got the chance to bring it out. I thought it had a lot of use and potential there. And, of course, the other time I used it, getting the surprise Scarf kill, and then a couple other with its amazing Dynamax typing. Not really great, admittedly, and I didn't really expect too much out of it, but having the fast Earthquake was cool, having the fast Iron Head was cool. Very poor man's Excadrill, very poor man's. It would have been cool to maybe pair it with Sand Force in some way. I was definitely hoping to try to set up its own sand for Sand Force, but I never got the opportunity to do that. So it has a couple more tricks up its sleeve, but never really found a great chance to bring it. Dynamax mons were an interesting mechanic in the league for sure. And that may not be highlighted better by anything than Kingler, who finished, of course, 9-0 in the 4 games abroad, getting at least 1 kill every time I came, though I may have forced that a little bit as well. 130 base attack, access to agility and swords dance. What more needs to be said? 115 defense, helped out a ton too to find opportunities to switch in. What an absolute monster. It hopefully contributes to the Dynamax discussion in the future, where we realize there are going to be some problems you're allowing to Dynamax, no matter what you're allowing for your Dynamax standards. Kingler stood out to me as a very potent threat. Most weeks there were definitely some hard stops to it, and I had to definitely play around that. Perhaps even bringing it and trying to force those out. What it may have been another style I could have tried to use, but there were some matches where it was just unusable. So not something I would recommend bringing every single week, not even in a Dynamax format, but definitely served its purpose as my Dynamax Mon, the lead Dynamax Mon on the squad. Not that I use Dynamax all that often. As you can see, I only brought a Dynamax Mon 6 times, and I definitely did not Dynamax all of those times. In the 10 weeks. So there are definitely some ways to deal with Dynamax even from Tier 5, but Kingler was an outstanding user of that ability there. So I can finish 59-18 overall with the total for the season, which is a plus 41. Very impressive through 10 weeks. Again, averaging just over a 4-0 victory. That's absolutely insane. Right, so such a fun team to use. Very cool to be able to glue some of these pieces together in different ways that I didn't expect to. I definitely learned how to prepare for specific mons using this team, and how to learn a little bit of how to break a team down. I think especially one of the biggest learning tools for me was the ability to use something like Substitute Toxic, Aegislash. While it seems like a pretty standard set or something that would be a little bit BM to use, I definitely enjoyed my time using it. It was awesome. It taught me a lot about how to beat my counters, and definitely appreciated everything that Aegislash was able to bring to the table. Just look at these first 6 picks and how well these clicked together. I would definitely feel comfortable bringing these 6 to most matchups, to be honest. And it was very interesting to see how I could branch out and how I could mold these to do specific things and tasks. So very cool team. I enjoyed it a ton. Obviously ended up doing pretty well with it. And then if we move over to the main stats page, we can see how everything fared in the league overall. So if we go over to the active kill leaders, we see Aegislash and Charizard are tied with 14 kills, which is very cool that Dynamax Mon was able to do that well. And I suppose in the finals I could have tried to give the last kill to Aegislash, which may have been a little BM there as well. But Charizard well deserved there. Aegislash, wow. Got a kills variety ways, close combat, toxic, shadow ball, shadow sneak. Cool mon, enjoyed it a lot. Again, Charizard, a lot of it was from just sweeping with Dynamax, so the couple times that it came out and it really got to shine there. Chad's Kyurem did a ton of work, multiple matches it was able to sweep very effectively and efficiently. Even got a lucky freeze with Freeze Dry to bring him a W in a game that he maybe shouldn't have won. Very cool there. Hydreigon from the Waterdeep Wobbuffets with 12 kills as well. Ended up using the Hydreigon very effectively, mostly using Nasty Plot setup set, which is, I really like the Nasty Plot set, being able to go up to +2, then drop a Draco on something, or be able to have that +2, something like Flash Cannon or Flamethrower to be able to do a lot more damage than before. So very cool set there. We also see Joey and his Akron Agrons got Gengar up there into the top 5. Considering that he wasn't using it all that effectively early, very cool to see him turn it around, as usually using the Choice Spec set, and maybe Scarf once or twice as well, but with Specs, Gengar starts hitting for a ton of damage, and the 110 base speed outspeeds so many things, you don't necessarily even need a Scarf, which is pretty cool. Kingler and Kyurem-Black tied for 6. Did a fantastic job, went over them too, but something else interesting is that Mamoswine of the Blessed Warrens ended up finishing 8th, which is very cool. That a team that ended up doing so poorly still had an outstanding member like Mamoswine. I know that was one of my biggest fears whenever I played the Blessed Walreins. So shout out to Mamoswine for putting in the utmost of work. It's a similar story with Zeraora as well. On a team that performed overall relatively poorly, but still managed the 8 kills. Very cool for Zeraora. Definitely a speed demon that has a lot of unpredictability on its side too. So very nice there. And then finished up with another Waterdeep Wobbuffet user in Gardevoir. I know he liked the Scarf and Spec sets, as mentioned earlier, but he ended up finding a lot of success with a substitute set that didn't even run leftovers necessarily, and Gardevoir able to set up on some things and just kind of go to town, right? Force switches very effectively. The typing, the stab that it gets, and just the raw stats end up being very good for him. However, it's a slightly different story here for the KD. As we see, of course, Aegislash leading the pack with that plus 13. Only one death compared to Charizard's 4, with Charizard finishing second and KD at plus 10. Very cool. Kingler, 0 deaths, as you will also see over on the next column. 9 and 0, very impressive from Kingler. Didn't end up fainting at all when I brought it. I made sure to protect it for sure for those kinds of opportunities. At plus 8, the Hydreigon and Kyurem, followed by the Kyurem-Black, who died twice unfortunately, but finished with plus 7. Gengar at plus 6. Waterdeep Bobbfett's Leafeon at 6 and 2, tied with my Seismitoad for plus 4 differential. That Leafeon had a full sweep of the Close Combat Club, I believe it was, after a Swords Dance and getting some Aerial Ace Max Airstreams off. Very cool there. And very cool to see the Dugtrio actually round things out too at 3 and 0. From the one time that it entered battle, I got 3 kills, and it was good enough to make the KD ratio there. So I feel like a lot of teams kind of relied on 1 or 2 Pokemon to put in a lot of work. I'm very, very proud to see so many different members on these lists, right? See Dugtrio, Seismitoad, Kyurem, Aegislash, Kingler on these lists. Very nice to see how often I was able to spread out kills. Over here on the deaths with most matches, and they played with the death percentages. Kingler, of course, never died in its 4 matches. But another cool one is Aromatisse. The Close Combat Club won 3 games this season, and it was the 3 games that he brought Aromatisse, which is kind of interesting there. Perhaps should end up bringing it more often. A cool mon that has some utility with Trick Room or Wish or even Nasty Plot to go along with some nasty Moonblast there. And from there, you'll notice a pattern of a lot of Bouffalant's Pokemon here. Aegislash, Scrafty, Kyurem, etc. So this Cinderace that only died 1 time, that was of course in the finals, was the only time it ended up fainting. That was on turn 1 with the surprise scarf. That was very fun. I got so excited with that one. Rotom, of course, and then Hydreigon ended up being played very well. Celebi and his Corviknight ended up being played very well too. Brought it to 10 matches, only died 5 times there. Speaking of, most times the things were brought, as we can see, the Waterdeep Bobbfett's brought Corviknight, Ditto, and Hydreigon to all of his matches, which is pretty interesting. I know Ditto was his first pick. It didn't perform quite as well as I'd hoped, but I definitely saw the value in it coming every single week and even having to prep for it every single week, which was cool. Dugtrio from the Akron Agrons came every week. Of course, you have to have the threat of trapping something there. Necrozma, Wailord, and Zeraora all came for the Cleveland cast forms, which is pretty cool because Wailord is his Dynamax mod, and I know he was very excited to use it and got to use it 10 times, so awesome for him. And then Rotom-Heat was the only one that I brought every single time, but it just was a super important glue piece every week, so those are the 8 months I brought to every match. Again, the winning percentage, we've kind of... This was about the seeding that we had seen, right, where we'd finished first, the Incineroar second, Waterdeep Bobbfett's third, and the Akron Agrons fourth, and from there the others all kind of mixed together there. And actually the Seattle team finished 5th, I believe, with the Close Combat Club finishing 6th. I don't think that match has been recorded yet, but once it is, you'll see the Steamrollers up in 5th place, the Close Combat Club 6th, and actually I believe the Walreins did defeat the cast forms in the final week there too, so... Very cool there. Also, interesting of the cast forms is these 3 mons that were brought to every single game, Necrozma, Wailord, and Zeraora, also fainted every single week. His wins end up being things like an Ice Cube at the end winning, or a Mandibuzz and things like that. Or Mandibuzz with the Walreins, but you know what I'm saying. There's different mons that ended up taking the victory in the end. So. Yeah, hope you're all enjoying this league. You can see we've got all times here, so as we continue to do more content in the future, this will be able to rack up and we'll see which mons do well. Perhaps someone else decides to snag that Rotom-Heat next time and does just as well, and we'll be able to see it up there again in the all-time KD, right? With at least 10 matches played. It is currently number 1 as only fainting 3 times, so... I'm very excited to see this fill out a whole lot more, and we'll see how many of these mods I have used by the time we've started compiling a lot of them. Definitely look forward to future seasons. I already gave kind of a teaser before where we're definitely going to be going out and picking my number 1 favorite Pokemon of all time in the first round. If you're excited, please continue to watch, continue to support me here, and let's see what else Draft League and YouTube have in store for me, shall we? Thanks a lot.